Hey guys, how are you?
Doing great. How are
Hi.
you?
I'm doing great. So you guys are obviously you're hosting a podcast about the best part of Marvel, which is the ladies.
Correct.
Um
Can't argue.
yeah, they're the best part. So Preeti and I are annoying about a specific family of Marvel characters. I'm talking about the spider people. Because I was saying before we started recording that if you look at mine and Preeti's text messages, it's if it's not complaining about something, it's all just Spider-Man adjacent things. That's just all it is.
I feel like Ellie can relate.
I feel like I know a thing or two about spider
Maybe
people.
just a little
Just a
bit.
few things
Which
about spider people.
which is very funny because your first episode is about Gwen. And at first I was going to be like, oh, that makes sense. That's the best spider. That's the best. Like if I was labeling a female spider person that I love the best. And then I started to think about it and I was like, well, actually, and I just kept going down a rabbit hole of the spider ladies that I love. And it just never stopped in my brain. So when you guys are going through this podcast and you have to kind of talk about the ladies of Marvel for both of you, how do you kind of justify talking about one specific lady per episode and not just like going into a rabbit hole of all of these characters that are also interwoven for each episode? Preeti, do you
Well,
want to start, or
go
Ellie?
ahead.
No, Ellie, you were ready. Go.
I was going to say, it helps that we have really good producers. We have really good
Yes.
producers who are like, this is the one character you're allowed to talk about this episode. And, we do sometimes go down rabbit holes because, as you said, everything in the Marvel Universe is interconnected. These characters are friends with each other. And in fact, in our episode that just came out about the Wasp, we talk about her friendship with She-Hulk a bit and, things like that. So there are always going to be opportunities to talk about other characters, but we have very good producers who try and keep us on track in terms of this is the character we are focusing on, this is what we are talking about, and then edit around that after the fact. We have so much fun that there is a fair amount of editing that goes into getting this episode to around 30 minutes.
I know. I was gonna say, if you think about like what ends up getting cut or just mostly for time or focus to keep that, like our producers are so good about keeping the narrative focus so it all sounds coherent, because as much as we're like, and we love this and remember that time this happened, it's like, well, let's think about who's listening to this and that they can follow the train of thought in a way that isn't just us being like excited for an hour and talking about whatever we want. That said, when Rogue comes out, we did we did go a little into the deep end in terms of like we're both just such huge fans of the
Yeah.
character that I feel like they were literally like, we can't find things to cut.
12 hour rogue
Yeah.
cut.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It would have been possible. We could do a whole season. Well, and there's also stuff that comes in like, I could be wrong post editing process, but I
Mm-hmm.
believe I go on a whole tangent about, Superior Spider-Man in our Kamala Khan
Correct.
episode.
I feel like
So,
yes.
it's because things are intertwined, not just in terms of the stories that these characters share, but also just in the process of what makes Marvel Marvel. And because we've all worked on these characters in so many different ways over the years, that sometimes this one story will remind us of this other story, and off down the rabbit hole we'll go.
Which that's why Marvel's great, because then you're just on a rabbit hole and you're thinking about 20 other things, and then you're like, why am I here? But the one thing that I like to get on a soapbox about, and everyone yells at me all the time, is that my favorite Marvel lady is not a villain, as mainly men on the internet like to say she is, because Wanda Maximoff is not a villain. She is an anti hero. And I loudly say it, and I get yelled at all the time. But when you are talking about some of these women who are very complicated, and their comic history is complicated, a lot of them have many different origins and storylines and things that contradict itself throughout time and history. what is the thing that you guys try and like focus on and harness when you are doing these stories or like these episodes that do have so much history? Like Rogue has been around for years, and like you said, there's a lot there, so they can get long and they can get very impassioned, especially when you are fans of this stuff.
Well, what's nice about the way this season is structured is that it's not just like deep dives into the history. We're looking at all these various facets of how these characters, both in the Marvel universe and in our real world, exist. So it's not just like, let's look at, 17 issues of Rogue and talk about it, or Emma Frost. It's let's talk to a fashion expert about the covers that feature Emma's Hellfire looks and what she can pick up about the character from the way the character dresses, which was one of the most fascinating conversations we had. But it's talking to real life scientists about telekinesis and Jean Grey. It's not just focusing on the creative aspect. Of course, we do talk to creators, like artists and writers and editors, which is equally fascinating, but it allows the episodes to somehow like have more room to breathe because we're not beholden to only talking about story.
Yeah, I had a friend texting me about the science segments this morning, that she was like, there are so many kinds of wasps. And, she's just so excited. And I love that. I love that we're doing the science segments. Those are new this season, and it's such a cool addition.
Mm-hmm.
But we do get into kind of the complexities of these characters over history, both in the fact that in most episodes, we bring in someone who is a particular fan of this character. On a couple of cases, Preeti and I handled it for ourselves, but very as often as possible, bringing in somebody who can talk to us about why specifically they love this character and this character's history. And in the cases of both Jean Grey, Emma Frost, we did have some conversations about, is this character a hero or a villain? This character's done a wide variety of things over the years, some of which killed a lot of people. But characters' lives are long, and we all love a redemption arc.
That is true. No one loves a redemption arc more than a superhero fan. It is in our blood. That's what we're meant for. Which shows like this though that do have kind of like all these moving parts and different segments that you guys get to explore. What has been your favorite aspect of this season in particular? Because like you said, you guys got to talk to fashion designers and science. Yeah, added the science sections. Like, what was something outside of those two, obviously, that you got to do that was so kind of cool that you weren't expecting?
You want to go first, Ellie?
Sure. Well, I'd be remiss if I did not mention you, Preeti, that having you on this season has
They're
been
gonna think I set you up.
You did set me up. So no, working with Preeti this season has been a joy, because I had read some of her work previously, but we had not met. So this has been super, super fun. And then beyond that, at the risk of stealing another answer from you,
oh no, I know what you're gonna say, and I'm gonna say the same thing.
Am I gonna say the reading list? If that's what you were gonna say,
that isn't it. That isn't it. That's good. That's
good. Okay, great. I was gonna say the reading lists, I think, are another really cool thing that we're doing this season, that Robin Belt comes on every episode and talks to you about, if you do want to dive into this character's history, where do you start, and kind of takes us on a tour of some of their key issues and where that puts you in their timeline, and should you read these in order, or is there a different kind of way to look at it. And I think that's a really cool component of these that allows people, if they find a character who they really, really love but have not had as much experience with, it gives them a place to start.
Yeah, that was very, very cool. And I swear this was like part of my answer before you said what you said, Ellie, but coming in to this season as someone who's coming from the writing side, it was always really interesting to have conversations with you because Ellie is working on the editorial side, and seeing how we both come at these characters that we love so dearly is like the conversations were always fascinating. Also interviewing Iman Vellani. I was like, that was a pretty big day.
Well, yeah, because listen, I say this not because Preeti and I are friends, but Preeti, you write our favorite sweet little boy in the best way because you understand him. So I love seeing good things happen to you, like you interviewing Amalani, because I was like, yes, this is this greatest little nerd battle because she's just as nerdy as you are, and I
That's
was like,
true.
great, they're little Marvel nerds. Just
But that's the whole thing, right? Is like I think all of us involved in this project, like Ellie, I keep bringing up the Rogue episode because it is like I think the perfect encapsulation of who we are in relation to Marvel, because it's our histories and what like our current like adult human selves thinking about this character and interviewing people who touched parts of this character that were formative for us as creatives. And so it's just been like 6 months of nerding out about the best characters with people who love them as much as I do. And that's been amazing.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been at Marvel for just about 9 years at this point with a break in the middle. And so, it's always amazing to me that we can find new levels of nerddom, like new doors in my own, fandom that I'm like, oh man, I didn't know I would get to talk to this person and it would almost bring me to tears. But, we did a bunch of interviews about the X-Men animated series for this season. And, it just took me straight back to my earliest days as a Marvel fan. And I was like, this is so cool. So it's always neat when you find those things.
That theme still unlocks something when it comes on. You're like, where am I? Sitting on a couch in 1993 or whatever it was. But for last quick question for you both, obviously you guys like this show still, like, because this canon is so large, has not even scratched the surface of the amount of Marvel women that exist in this universe, which is great. I love that there are so many ladies in the Marvel canon, that there are a lot out there that you guys haven't gotten to talk about. Who is someone that you want to talk about in the future that you guys haven't gotten to, that you would be very excited to talk about, like Rogue, for hours on end, just unedited?
Oh,
it's a good question.
I know, there's so, because they're like you said, like we there's so many more characters to touch on. I mean, just going off what you said at the top, Scarlet Witch would be an amazing episode, I think, because her history is so long and there are parts of her that are so relevant for us today that I think it would be amazing.
And I've been on the show since 2020, so we have touched on some of those other characters in other formats in the past, but I would love to like tackle a Scarlet Witch Wanda episode in the format that we use this season.
Right.
Same with, I will always have a soft spot for Silk, because I was her midwife in some ways. I was there when she was born, and so I love Cindy so much, and would love for us to kind of do an episode where we did, again, let's bring in another psychologist. Let's let's talk about all the things. I've got our science segment ready to go. Tell Isabel.
That is really, not to again be like we're two Spider-Man nerds, but there is I will have to screen grab. She mentioned Silk, and then the two of us both
went
like, Cindy.
Well,
two people just like, yeah.
And Cindy's such a cool character because she really gets at, I think, the core of what makes Marvel work, in the fact that because of the way her spider sense works, because she has this like extra powerful turned up to 11 spider sense, it's a way for us to talk about things like anxiety disorders and stuff like that in a really cool superhero-y way. And I love that. Anytime we can do that with a character where we can kind of, really get to the core of something, but wrapped in a fun story. I think that's when Marvel's at its best, and something we do better than almost anybody.
Yeah, I agree. I love the show. I can't wait for people to listen to more. I want so much more of it. And thank you guys so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was so
Thank you.
fun.
Guys.